The rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 47th floor conference room as Sarah Chen stared at the acquisition documents spread across the mahogany table. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the clause buried on page 247 of the 300-page merger agreement, a clause that would strip her of everything she'd built over the past 15 years. Section 15.7. Management Transition Provision. Upon completion of the merger, according to YouTube Analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. All founding members of Chen Technologies shall be immediately terminated without cause, forfeiting all equity, stock options, and future royalty agreements. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't what Marcus Hartwell had promised during their handshake agreement 6 months ago. The CEO of Titan Industries had looked her in the eye and sworn that her team would be protected, that this $375 million acquisition was about partnership, not pillaging. Something wrong, Sarah? Marcus's voice cut through her shock like a blade. He sat across from her, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile predatory beneath kind eyes. "This clause," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not what we discussed." Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, his expression shifting from mock concern to cold satisfaction. "Business evolves, Sarah. You of all people should understand that. Your artificial intelligence algorithms are worth hundreds of millions. But your team? Well, let's just say Titan has its own talent pool." The other executives around the table, Marcus's people, watched with barely concealed amusement. Sarah realized with crushing clarity that she'd walked into a trap. The 6 months of negotiations, the late-night calls building trust, the promises of maintaining her company culture, all of it had been an elaborate deception. "You can't do this," she said, finding her voice. "My team created everything you're buying, the patents, the code, the client relationships, which will all transfer beautifully to Titan's existing structure," Marcus interrupted, "thanks to some very carefully worded intellectual property clauses you signed months ago. Your lawyers really should have read the fine print." Sarah's mind raced back to the preliminary agreements. The innocuous-seeming IP sharing clauses that Marcus's legal team had insisted were standard industry practice. She'd been so focused on protecting her team's jobs and the company's mission that she'd trusted their assurances. "The signing is in 3 days," Marcus continued, checking his platinum Rolex. "I suggest you use that time to prepare your team for the transition. We'll be announcing the terminations the day after closing." Sarah gathered her copies of the documents with shaking hands. "I need time to review this with my legal team." "Of course. But the terms are non-negotiable. Walk away now. And your company dies a slow death fighting patent lawsuits and client defection campaigns." "We've made sure of that." Marcus's smile was razor thin. "You built something beautiful, Sarah. Now adults are going to run it properly." The elevator ride down felt eternal. Sarah's reflection in the polished steel doors showed a woman who'd aged years in minutes, her black hair disheveled, her usually composed features etched with betrayal and rage. By the time she reached the parking garage, her shock had crystallized into something harder and more dangerous: determination. Sarah drove through the Seattle rain to her company's headquarters, a converted warehouse in South Lake Union that she'd purchased with her first round of funding. Chen Technologies occupied 3 floors of gleaming workspace, where 247 employees, her family, really worked on artificial intelligence systems that were revolutionizing everything from medical diagnostics to autonomous vehicles. She found her co-founder and CTO, David Kim, in his usual spot, hunched over 3 monitors in the development lab, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scattered circuit boards. "How did it go?" he asked without looking up from his code. "We're fucked," Sarah said simply. David's fingers stopped moving across the keyboard. He turned slowly, taking in her expression. "Fucked." Sarah pulled up a chair and explained everything. David's face went through the same journey hers had: confusion, disbelief, and finally, cold fury. 6 months of lies. It gets worse. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed him the message from their head of business development. Jennifer just texted. 3 of our biggest clients got calls today. Someone told them Chen Technologies was having financial difficulties and suggested they might want to consider switching to Titan's competing products. David stared at the screen. They're trying to destroy us either way. If we don't sell, they'll strangle us in the market. If we do sell, they get everything and we get nothing. Not nothing, Sarah said quietly. I checked my employment contract. There's a standard non-compete clause, but it only applies to AI development. It says nothing about business consulting or investment advice. Over the next 48 hours, Sarah barely slept. She spent her time in her home office, a converted bedroom overlooking Elliott Bay, surrounded by legal documents, financial records, and her laptop. She ordered takeout and survived on coffee, while she researched everything she could find about Marcus Hartwell and Titan Industries. What she discovered was illuminating. This wasn't Marcus's first acquisition and gut operation. Over the past decade, Titan had bought 7 smaller tech companies using similar tactics. Each time, the founders had been promised partnership and integration. Each time, the leadership had been terminated within weeks of closing. Their innovations absorbed into Titan's portfolio, while the original creators were left with non-disclosure agreements and non-compete clauses that effectively ended their careers. But Sarah also found something else: a pattern of aggressive expansion funded by debt. Titan looked solid from the outside, but their balance sheet told a different story. The $375 million for her company wasn't coming from cash reserves. It was leveraged against 3 other recent acquisitions, creating a house of cards that could topple if any single deal fell through. More importantly, she discovered that the financing for her acquisition was contingent on her company maintaining its current client base and revenue projections. If Chen Technologies lost more than 20% of its clients before closing, the deal would collapse. Sarah smiled for the first time in 2 days. She had found Marcus's weakness. The next morning, Sarah called an all-hands meeting. She stood in front of her entire company: engineers, designers, sales staff, even the receptionist, and told them everything. The room erupted in angry voices, but Sarah raised her hand for silence. Here's what we're going to do, she said. We're going to kill this deal, and we're going to make sure Marcus Hartwell never tries to destroy another company like this again. She explained her plan. It was audacious, risky, and probably career-ending. But as she looked around the room at the faces of people who'd trusted her with their livelihoods, she saw the same determination that had driven her to build Chen Technologies from nothing. David stood up first. I'm in. One by one, every person in the room stood up. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. This was why she'd started the company, not for the money or the recognition, but for this: the loyalty and trust of people working towards something bigger than themselves. All right, she said. Let's get to work. The first phase of Sarah's plan began immediately. Instead of trying to save her existing client relationships, she decided to sacrifice them strategically. She called each major client personally and recommended they switch to Titan Industries. She want to be transparent with you, she told Janet Morrison, CEO of their largest client, a medical device manufacturer. Chen Technologies is going through some changes, and I can't guarantee the level of service you deserve. Titan Industries has similar capabilities, and frankly, their resources might be better suited to your needs. Janet was shocked. Sarah, you've been our partner for 3 years. Your AI diagnostic system has saved us millions. Why would you recommend a competitor? Because I care more about your success than my commission. Sarah lied smoothly. Sometimes the right thing to do is step aside. She had similar conversations with 6 other major clients, each time positioning herself as the selfless professional looking out for their best interests. By the end of the day, Chen Technologies had lost 31% of its client base, more than enough to trigger the financing contingency that would kill the acquisition. Phase 2 required something more personal. She drove to Bellevue that evening, to the exclusive Meidenbauer Bay neighborhood, where Marcus Hartwell lived in a $12 million waterfront mansion. She parked across the street and waited, watching the house until she saw Marcus's Tesla pull into the circular driveway. Sarah waited another hour, then knocked on the front door. Marcus answered himself, casual in jeans and a sweater, clearly not expecting visitors. "Sarah? What the hell are you doing here?" "I wanted to thank you," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Marcus's confusion was genuine. "Thank me? You taught me something important about business, about the difference between partnership and predation. I wanted to show my appreciation." She handed him an envelope. "Consider this my resignation from the deal." Marcus tore open the envelope and found a single sheet of paper, a formal withdrawal from the acquisition, effective immediately. His face went white. "You can't do this. We have contracts, which are void if Chen Technologies loses more than 20% of its client base before closing," Sarah said pleasantly. "I made sure to read the fine print this time. All of it." "You crazy bitch. You just destroyed your own company to spite me?" Sarah's smile widened. "Actually, I did something much worse than that." She pulled out her phone and showed him a video recording. It was security footage from the Titan Industries conference room, showing Marcus's cruel explanation of how he'd manipulated the deal to steal her company. The audio was crystal clear. "How did you never asked me to turn off my phone during our meetings," Sarah said. "Corporate espionage laws are tricky, but there's nothing illegal about recording conversations when you're a party to them. Especially when those conversations reveal fraud and contract manipulation." Marcus lunged for the phone, but Sarah stepped back. "Too late. This has already been uploaded to cloud storage and shared with the Seattle Times, TechCrunch, and the Washington State Attorney General's office. Oh, and the SEC. They're very interested in Titan's acquisition practices." "You have no idea what you've done," Marcus snarled. "I'll destroy you. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. Because by my calculations, losing my acquisition will collapse your leveraged financing structure. Your board is going to demand answers you can't give. And your other acquisition targets are going to run for the hills when they see how you treat your partners." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Marcus, that non-compete clause you were so excited about? It only applies if the acquisition completes. Since there's no acquisition, my team and I are free to compete with you directly." Sarah walked back to her car, with Marcus's curses following her into the night. She sat in her driver's seat for a moment, hands shaking with adrenaline and the magnitude of what she'd just done. The next 72 hours were a whirlwind of media attention, legal maneuvering, and corporate chaos. The recording of Marcus went viral on social media, with corporate bullying trending worldwide. The Seattle Times ran a front-page exposé on Titan Industries' acquisition practices, featuring interviews with founders from the 7 previous companies Marcus had gutted. Titan's stock price plummeted 37% in 2 days. 3 other pending acquisitions were canceled as target companies withdrew from negotiations. The SEC announced a formal investigation into Titan's business practices. Marcus was placed on administrative leave, while the board conducted an internal review. But the most satisfying moment came Wednesday afternoon when Sarah received a call from Rebecca Torres, managing partner at Northgate Capital, one of Seattle's most prestigious venture capital firms. "Miss Chen," Rebecca said, "I've been following your situation in the news. I wanted to discuss a potential investment opportunity." "I appreciate the interest," Sarah replied. "But Chen Technologies isn't currently seeking funding. Actually, I was thinking about something bigger. What if, instead of building one company, you built an ecosystem? A venture fund focused on protecting innovative startups from predatory acquisitions." Think of it as a shield for entrepreneurs who want to build something meaningful without being devoured by corporate giants. Sarah sat forward in her chair. Go on. We'd provide you with $50 million in initial capital and complete autonomy over investment decisions. Your experience with Titan makes you uniquely qualified to spot and prevent the kind of manipulative tactics they used. You could be the guardian angel that founders like yourself never had. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the same conference room where Marcus had tried to destroy her company. But this time, she was the one making the presentation. The room was filled with entrepreneurs, founders of startups that had approached her new venture fund, Chen Shield Capital, seeking both investment and protection from predatory acquirers. The traditional venture capital model focuses on exits, Sarah told the group. Our model focuses on sustainability. We invest in companies that want to build long-term value, not just flip to the highest bidder. And when companies like Titan Industries come calling with their manipulative tactics, we help you fight back. She clicked to her next slide, which showed a photo of Marcus Hartwell. Speaking of which, I thought you'd be interested to know that Mr. Hartwell was terminated from Titan Industries last month. The company is currently undergoing bankruptcy proceedings. Their aggressive acquisition strategy finally caught up with them when they couldn't service their debt without the revenue projections from deals that no longer existed. Sarah raised her hand for quiet. But this isn't about revenge, she continued. It's about building a better model. Every company in this room has the potential to change the world. My job is to make sure you get the chance to do it on your own terms. After the presentation, Sarah retreated to her new office, a corner space in a downtown Seattle high-rise, with views of both the Sound and Mount Rainier. David found her there an hour later, studying financial projections for their latest potential investment. You know, he said, settling into the chair across from her desk. 6 months ago, we were running a mid-sized AI company with decent prospects and a stable future. And now? Sarah asked. Now you're running a $50 million venture fund that's already been approached by 3 major pension funds wanting to invest additional capital. Chen Technologies is pulling in more revenue than ever as an independent consultancy. And Marcus Hartwell is probably updating his LinkedIn profile with seeking new opportunities. Sarah laughed. When you put it like that, it sounds almost anticlimactic. Are you kidding? This is the best possible outcome. You didn't just get revenge, you turned the entire experience into a platform for helping other entrepreneurs avoid the same trap. Sarah nodded, but her expression grew thoughtful. You know what the strangest part is? I actually feel grateful to Marcus. David raised an eyebrow. Grateful? To the guy who tried to steal your company and fire all of us? Think about it. If he'd honored his original agreement, we'd all be Titan Industries employees right now. I'd be reporting to some VP of acquired technologies, watching our innovations get diluted into their corporate structure. Instead, his betrayal forced me to find strength I didn't know I had. It pushed me to think bigger than I ever had before. She gestured toward the window, where the Seattle skyline stretched toward the horizon. Chen Technologies was always limited by my vision of what one company could accomplish. But Chen Shield Capital? We can protect dozens of companies, foster hundreds of innovations, create thousands of jobs. Marcus tried to make me smaller, and instead, he made me bigger. David grinned. So, in a way, his secret clause didn't destroy a $375 million deal. It created something worth much more. Exactly. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's becoming everything your enemy tried to prevent you from being. 6 months later, Sarah received an unexpected email. It was from Marcus Hartwell, sent from a generic Gmail account. Sarah, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted to reach out. I've spent the last few months in what I guess you could call forced retirement, and it's given me time to think about a lot of things. You were right about Titan's practices. I told myself I was being smart, strategic, but really I was just being cruel. I destroyed a lot of good companies, and hurt a lot of good people. What happened between us was the culmination of years of increasingly toxic behavior. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that seeing what you built after our deal fell apart, the fund, the companies you've helped, and the model you've created, it's made me realize what I could have been doing with my career instead of what I was doing. I hear you're considering launching a West Coast expansion. If you ever need someone who knows how corporate predators think, someone who understands their tactics from the inside, I'd be willing to help. Not as a partner or an executive, just as someone who wants to make amends by protecting other entrepreneurs from people like I used to be. I know it's a long shot, but I had to ask. Marcus Sarah read the email 3 times, then forwarded it to David with a simple question. What do you think? His response came back within minutes. It's your call. But if we're really in the business of second chances, maybe we should offer them to everyone. Even former enemies. Sarah stared at her computer screen for a long time, thinking about forgiveness and redemption and the strange ways that betrayal could lead to unexpected allies. Finally, she began to type. Marcus, I appreciate your honesty. Recovery from toxic behavior is a long process, and I respect that you're willing to begin it. We're not ready to discuss employment, but we are always looking for advisory board members who can provide unique perspectives on predatory business practices. If you're serious about making amends, perhaps we can start there. The position is unpaid, requires full disclosure of your past actions to our entrepreneurs, and includes a comprehensive background check. If you're willing to accept those terms, we can arrange a preliminary conversation. The West Coast expansion is happening. But it's not about conquest or acquisition. It's about creating a network of protection and support for innovators who want to change the world. If you want to be part of that mission, you'll need to prove you understand the difference. She hit send and leaned back in her chair. Outside her window, the Seattle sky was clearing after an afternoon storm, and the late sun was painting the buildings gold. Sarah smiled, thinking about second chances and the unexpected ways that revenge could transform into redemption. The secret clause that was supposed to destroy her deal had ultimately created something much more valuable. A new model for how business could be conducted with integrity, protection, and purpose. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't just living well, it was making sure others could live well too.